Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar, Using BigQuery to Unlock the Business Potential Within Enterprise Data. My name is Michelle Versteeg and I'm the Director of Marketing for Cardinal Path and will serve as your moderator today. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please submit them through the questions panel on your screen and we'll address them towards the end of the presentation. We are recording the session and everyone who registered will get an email with a link to the on-demand version. Feel free to join in the conversation today using Twitter. The hashtag is BigQuery for Big Data. And a bit about Cardinal Path. We are a digital data analytics firm that helps organizations unlock the value in their data and move the business forward based on those insights. Our teams comprise some of the top minds in the digital space, and our aim is to share all that we know. This year, Cardinal Path was named Most Influential Agency by the Digital Analytics Association. And we're proud to be at the cutting edge of this industry, working with some of the world's most recognized brands to achieve their goals using data and analytics. In this webinar, you're going to learn about one of the most advanced and actionable solutions for big data analytics available today. It was last year at this time that we presented our first webinar on Google BigQuery, and a year later, we've got lots more to share with you. So let me introduce our speakers. Nate Payne is Cardinal Path's Associate Director of Data Science and Engineering. He's a systems architect, marketer, and statistician with over 10 years of experience. Nate manages the delivery of enterprise data science, engineering, and analytics initiatives, including machine learning, data modeling, systems architecture design, and data warehousing projects for Cardinal Path's Fortune 1000 clients. Google BigQuery is something he's been working with for a while now, and Nate, it's great to have you on this webinar to share your expertise.
Thanks very much, Michelle.
We've also got Corey Coburg, co-founder and senior partner with Cardinal Path. Corey is responsible for our data science and analytics practice here at Cardinal Path, and he's a frequent speaker on digital analytics. He's the author of industry-leading guides, including Google Analytics on lynda.com and Wiley's Hour a Day on Display Advertising. Corey has previously held positions with Intel, Compaq, and Qualcomm, and has been a big part of the movement towards scientific, results-oriented digital analytics and marketing for leading organizations. And over the past year, Corey has overseen the work of many of our clients in their BigQuery projects, and you're going to hear more about that today. Welcome, Corey.
Thanks, Michelle. Glad to be here.
And before I hand over to you, Corey, I'd like to run just a really quick poll to gauge the level of BigQuery experience among you all. So whether you have never used it or you're just getting started, or if you have a pretty good handle on it, just take a second to let us know where you're at, and we'll share the results a little later on. And Corey, with that, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Michelle. All right. So we originally did this webinar last year when BigQuery was brand new, and while the product has evolved, the value proposition remains largely unchanged, and it's possibly even stronger than ever. So we hear constantly about how big data is essential for the future of marketing, and frankly that's true in the present as well. As we see in this study by IBM that backs up what we see every day, the data explosion is literally the #1 thing that keeps CMOs up at night. But just getting past the buzzwords can be difficult for many CMOs. There's a lot to keep track of, and they really struggle with just knowing where to start. How do I dig in? How do I begin? And it's also easy to forget that for many companies, web analytics data, this digital analytics data, is the original and most common big data set that they have. Now, we now have a broader set of digital marketing data that includes apps and advertising analytics, but even that is still largely in one place. For many companies, that place is Google Analytics. Now, Google Analytics is by orders of magnitude the most widely adopted digital analytics software, but you're largely limited to what the tool is going to expose to you, and as such, the features that Google's developed and what they've released. To be able to export this mountains of raw hit-level data from Google Analytics into Google's cloud computing infrastructure, it just opens up so many fascinating opportunities that I think we're just starting to see the creative things that can be done, and this is indeed a game changer for many. But just being able to access that pile of data is one thing. The ability to act on it and do something useful with it is another entirely. Now, you may be familiar with, or at least you've heard of, Hadoop and MapReduce and all the other tools that are required to put big data to use. The actual physical hardware and infrastructure required for big data can be pretty daunting and require large upfront costs in terms of both hardware, engineering, sysadmins, the whole piece. Now, Google has solved this in two ways. First, With their cloud-based big data solution, you can export your Google Analytics premium data, and even better, you can join that with your other data sets, such as your CRM data. Now, this makes it very valuable, it's actionable, and that combination is what we'll see in just a moment. Now, to give you a sense of the power of this, when we moved our first scripts over to test this out, so we moved from our internal servers over to BigQuery as just a pilot, we took a process that normally took just under a week. We ran that monthly and quarterly, and that process that took a week finished in 1.7 seconds. And we assumed it was a mistake, something had timed out, there was some error in the query. When we checked the data, it was actually correct. We had just reduced that from a week down to 1.7 seconds. Now, if you want to go in here, and as Nate will show in a bit, there's also a query anyone can run based on the Wikipedia data set that processed through 235 gigabytes of data in just 4.8 seconds. And that kind of speed, that kind of power is also game-changing. Now, the second problem that Google solved here is one of infrastructure and build-out costs. You no longer need to guess ahead of time what kind of capacity you might need in the future, build out those physical servers, or hire sysadmins by the dozen. You simply pay for the exact amount of data you query and store, nothing more, nothing less, and there's no required minimums. So for Cardinal Path and our clients, this means the barrier to entry for exploratory projects is far lower. We can jump into a project with the infrastructure already there and waiting for us. We just need to figure out what we want to do. Now, I mentioned last year that sometimes when a sea change occurs, it can sneak up on us, and it's really only clear in hindsight. But this is one where I think we can recognize it here in the moment as a major shift. Now, Google's far from the first provider to offer an elastic pay-as-you-go cloud infrastructure, of course. But the ability to access Google Analytics data directly and bring that speed and horsepower is the powerful combination that really only exists here. But it's not just about potential anymore, as we're seeing earlier adopters make major progress. Some clients have capitalized on the fact that you can easily and quickly join large data sets together to give you that full view of the customer. In one case, this data was combined so they could understand the patterns in which their customers use the multiple devices and channels, and how do you optimize that exact experience given all of those different ways in which people use this. BigQuery pulls all that data together. Now, in another, a major European retailer combined all the activity on the web with all their back-end e-commerce and CRM data to understand the true lifetime value and the behavior of their clients. Other clients have used BigQuery as their primary data store. In one case, replacing a system costing 7 figures per year, and then replacing it exclusively with BigQuery. Another is using the data to crunch through 60 terabytes of data to power their machine learning system and the dashboards that they use to make daily decisions that are really going to decide the fate of their company. Now, these are just a few of the examples of how folks are using this tool. Through this webinar, we hope to give you an intro to BigQuery and hopefully get you thinking about the types of things that you're going to do to utilize this tool to its full potential for your organization. Now, since we spoke last year, Google continues to ramp up the feature sets across the board, adding things in all the different areas here. A few of these key ones here, the ability to add a location data control for European clients, streaming inserts, there's enhancements to security, there's going to be more system integration, especially blogging, increased API request quotas are another big thing that was there, and the recovery of deleted data because, you know, things happen. So lots of improvements being made here as well. And now I'm going to turn it over to Nate, who's going to walk you through a quick demo and some details. But before I do, let's take a look at those poll results, and we've got one more question. So the question was, what is your organization's level of experience? And we see that 70% of you, 69, 70% are not using BigQuery at all. Fantastic. So we're going to give you this kind of from the ground up of what this is, how to use it, and kind of get you that introduction from there. And then another 21% here, so 90% are either not using it or just beginning to use it. Okay, fantastic. You are in the right place, and that's what we're going to move forward with. No experts here. Not surprising. Okay, poll question number 2. As I just mentioned, we have the ability to pull in data from GA. We also have the ability to upload your own data sets on there, and you don't have to use Google Analytics data at all to use BigQuery, or you can use the combination of those two things. And so that's really our question here is how would you plan to use this? What would your primary data sources be? Exclusively that data that's coming from Google Analytics, exclusively data that you're going to upload as your own data sets, or the combination of those two things with Google Analytics joined with another data set. Okay, we'll look at the results of this in just a minute, but for now I want to turn it over to Nate, who's going to walk us through a bit more details and a quick demo.
All right, now that Corey's had a chance to go through some of the interesting use cases that you'll find with Google BigQuery, I'd like to take you through the actual BigQuery interface. as you can see in front of me, we're looking right now at the Google BigQuery interface. So this is the interface where you can actually type in SQL-esque code to interact with your BigQuery datasets. Now, importantly, and as I believe was noted before, you absolutely can interact and query BigQuery many different ways, sometimes through an API. You can query it through external tools, but this is the interface view. Now what you're looking at in front of here on the left-hand side, and I'm just going to run you through our BigQuery interface. So this is, in BigQuery, everything is there's a project, there are data sets, there are tables, and there are jobs. And on the left-hand side here, you are going to actually see Cardinal Path. And this is referencing the Cardinal Path data set. You'll see here that I have the opportunity to switch to a different project if I happen to have a different project in terms of my organization, in terms of your own organization. But in this case, because I'm showing one sample, we have a single project. Now inside, you will see this number 988-43070, and you might be curious what that is. Well, that number actually corresponds to the Google Analytics View ID that helps you, that you've got on your Google Analytics account. So many of our clients actually have multiple views which they bring into BigQuery, a caveat being that you can only bring in one view per property from your Google Analytics account. But of course, if you have multiple properties, you can absolutely bring in one view from each one. In this case, I have one sample property from our Cardinal Path account. You can see a couple interesting things. The first being that there is a GA Sessions 184, and this is actually showing you all the Google Analytics sessions for this view. Now, as you follow my cursor, you'll see there's 184, so that means there's 184 tables, or 184 days of data that have been exported from Google Analytics over into BigQuery. It's an important point to note that the moment you turn on your BigQuery account, assuming that you've had the Google Analytics view in place, you can get up to approximately 13 months of Google Analytics data, Google Analytics daily data, hit-level data into BigQuery. The other important thing that you'll see is this intraday. So what that means is that today, of course, you know there's been an intraday movement. So about every 8 hours, there is a new upload of Google Analytics session data into BigQuery from GA. At the end of each day, the intraday values are, the intraday tables are merged and then created, and then yesterday's final table is created. So again, this is just to illustrate the fact that what you're seeing here is this is the result, the GA session data from the last 184 days and the intraday data set, which is queryable because it's in the Google Analytics data set. Now, an important thing is for anyone new to BigQuery, there are actually a lot of ways that you can practice without really using your own data. And I'm going to actually show you a practice example right now. Now, on the left-hand side, you'll see this data set, which is one of the public data sets. It's called the London Cycle Helmet data set. If you don't see this on your BigQuery, Google it, London Cycle Helmet, and basically add the data set here. Or you can, for example, right-click and switch to project, and then you can basically, well, you can display a certain project, and in here you're going to actually put the project ID, google.com/analytics-BigQuery, and that would create the sample data set. There are also other public data sets. These are all fascinating data sets that you can use to trial and test and basically play with. So everything from all of Shakespeare's work to do text parsing to Wikipedia entries to everything all updated. The important data set that I'm going to show you here is I'm going to use this Google Analytics London Cycle Helmet data set. Now this is an important one. This is a data set for a single day that simulates activity within a store that actually has Google Analytics data. Now you'll see here when I click on this, I don't have an option to scroll across multiple days because of course I only have a single day. And you'll see here over at the side, the schema is displayed. Now if you have questions on the schema, the link that you can go to is this BigQuery Export for Google Analytics link. And this is a link that you can find by searching. Or you can look at the BigQuery Export Schema. And when you click on the Export Schema, you will get a full explanation of every single item every single column that is included in that export. So if you're unsure, for example, what full visitor ID is, which is the analogous ID that matches, well, it doesn't match, but represents the client ID, which is inside the Google Analytics cookie ID, you can go here and you can get that confirmation. Now what I'm going to click on here is click on details, and just to show you really quickly, this is showing you the Google Analytics data. Now a few features of this data that I want to call out, and the reason I'm showing this on this public data is that, for example, you can absolutely, it's quite useful because everyone can see it. Now what you see here for every table, there is a description. So there's a table ID, a size, a number of rows, a creation time, a last modified date, because sometimes things are modified, and a data location. Importantly, as of the April release for BigQuery, the data location was allowed to be specified between the US and Europe. So if you have an organization with many European providers, just like on Amazon or on Compute Engine, you can have the Google Analytics data or the BigQuery data located over in the European time zone or European area zone. Now, what you're seeing here is you're looking at the table in the table view, and you can actually see a big gray gap between row number 1 and row number 2. Now the interesting thing, you might be saying, why is that? Well, that's because the data is not flattened. What you're looking at here is one individual visitor, and if I scroll all the way over to the right, this visitor had a visitor ID of 38006699. So that is their individual unique visitor ID in BigQuery. Now you might be saying, okay, so why is all this nesting happening? Well, if you have a quick look here, this is actually the hits.hit number. So what you're seeing here is the actual page path and the host name of the user, every single hit that they had of this data set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the user actually had 8 different hits inside their individual visit. And again, this emphasizes the importance that BigQuery is the only way to get access to hit level data, which is present from Google, from your GA data. Okay, so what you're seeing here is hits.hit number. There's a lot that you can do with this. Think about all the applications that were talked about in some of the use cases at the beginning. I can do page pathing. I can look and figure out what the first visit, what page is likely seen at the last visit, what the exit rate is. Oh, what are people bouncing? Are they staying? Why are they bouncing? Is there bounces caused by different browsers? In fact, you know what? Why don't we try and answer that question? Because I think that's a really interesting query, just as a light example here. So what I want to do is I'm going to actually, I'm just going to move this here. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on my GA data, and what I'd like to do here, I'm just going to click over here, is I'm going to actually run a query of this individual table. Okay, so I'm looking at the table that I've got right now, and I'm going to click right at the top here, query table. You'll see here that I don't have to know a lot of SQL. It immediately puts the data set here that it references. For any of you that are a little bit scared of learning SQL, first thing I would tell you is do not be afraid of it. Number one, there's a tremendous amount of resources. We help a lot of our clients basically get up to speed, and in fact, if you just follow Google's online resources, within a matter of days you can be up and rolling. Now, in order to calculate the bounce rate by browser, I have to think a little bit. So what I need is I need to figure out, I want to generate a final table, and I want to look at the total browsers, or the different browsers, Firefox, Chrome, etc. And I want to calculate bounce rate. So I'm going to calculate the bounce rate by the sum of the total bounces divided by the sum of total visits. So let me just kind of do this. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll, and I'm going to look at the schema, because that's going to be interesting. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to find, oh, what am I looking for here? Device.browser. So first I'm going to look at the device.browser, and then I'm going to actually write a little bit of SQL here. So then I'm going to basically ask for the sum of, what do I really need? I need the sum of the totals.bounces. I'm just going to manually do this. Once you write enough of this, then you'll get quite used to writing. And I'm going to call this an alias bounce rate, okay? So I'm going to select the device, and I'm going to select the total as bounce rate. Now where am I going to look? I'm looking in the data set that I'm currently on, which is important. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to need to do grouping. So I'm going to basically do the following. What are we grouping this by? I'm going to group by the device.browser. Okay? Now you'll see on the right-hand side this little check mark. The validator is quite important. The validator is helping me see if I've got an error. So if I've unfortunately made an error like this, you can see here as I wait a second, you know, it is looking, and it might, you know, it's not really flagging that it has an error yet. But if I had basically left this incomplete or tried to run this, you can see here that there's a big flag, and it says, uh-oh, click the validator. There's something wrong. Okay, so it's encountered an empty thing. So I'm going to do device.browser. Beautiful. So now I'm going to click run. Now here's what you can see here. First thing that I note is I click run and I get this bounce rate. Voila, beautiful. Each browser has the bounce rate. Now, number one, the formatting is just terrible. So that's really not good. I'd like to clean the formatting up, and there's some great ways that we can do this. Number two, they're not really in order. So from a reporting perspective, I'm a little bit, you know, upset with that. So let's clean up that, and then we'll kind of work through. So the first thing I'm going to do is, listen, I want to format this query before I clean it up. Now Google just rolled out this new query formatter. So you'll see the button Format Query. I can click a button, and you can see here that this formats it nicely. This is great for error checking. This officially was released on August 25th, 2015, yesterday, so quite greatly appreciated. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the round function. I'm going to round this to 2 decimal places. So that's going to give me the ability to round this, and I run the query again. Perfect. I've now got my bounce rate. Now let's say I'm really not happy with it because I want to keep it in a percentage. So I'm going to multiply this by 100 to keep this in a percentage. Oh, well, no, I'm going to put the 100 inside here if you allow me, just because, you know, this 14.0002 is really not a good, not being our friend. So here we go. So we now have different bounce rates. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we ordered these things together? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to throw an order by, well, let's order it by bounce rate, and I'm going to order it by bounce rate descending. There you go. Look at this. I now have got this device ordered by bounce rate. I've got the bounce rate for each browser. There you go. I've got some really useful information. Now before we end, I want to show you a few things here just really briefly, and of course you can learn a lot more in some of our custom training sessions and some of our other work here. A few things, there's some buttons that I haven't looked at. Number one, there's a Show Options button. You might be thinking, what is the Show Options button? Well, the Show Options button gives you the ability to access and have some control over how a query is run. So the first thing is a destination table. So you can see here that I ran this and it appeared below. I could download this as a JSON. I can download it as a CSV. I could actually save this as a table. But let's say I don't want to wait. For argument's sake, I'm going to click that download CSV because I'm going to come back to this. But let's say that I actually want to put this in a table on the left-hand side. So I'm going to tell it that when you produce this output, I'm going to put it in a table called test. Okay, so it's going to write this to a table called test, and I'm going to tell it that write it there if it's empty, and you'll see here that it's referencing the project cardinal path, my data set 988.4.3070, and then of course this table called test. I'm going to write if it's empty, because it's empty here. Allow large results is really interesting. Anytime that you do a lot of grouping or you need to basically write something and save it, that's when you have to click allow large results. So you have to be sensitive. I'll go into that another time, but that one is something to read about later. Flattening is important because you remember I just showed you that the data was not flat, so that can present some issues. And of course, finally, you have to deal with query caching. Do you want to cache the results? This is trying to use previous runs, so I won't talk too much about that. And interactive versus batch. All right, interactive basically meaning that, well, listen, do I want to press run and have it run in BigQuery system now, or do I want to click batch and have it start and not execute for say up to 3 hours or more? Now, you might think to yourself, why would you ever want to do that? Well, truth be told, we have many of our clients running dozens and dozens of queries simultaneously, and they might want to put some in certain order or batch certain processes and do things programmatically. So this is why you might be thinking about doing this. Now, I'm going to click Format Query again, and you'll see here that you can see my query is nicely formatted, and I'm going to click Run. Look what happens. Over in the test box, you'll see the table called test that we have sitting right here. Perfect. If I click on this table, you'll see that the schema is already created, the device rate and the bounce rate. The details are right here. You can actually see the result. And of course, I'm just going to hide this. You can see it in both JSON, which again, you might want to be taking this and pumping this up into something like high charts if you exported it or doing something like that. Or again, I can see it in the table view. And you can see a few options here that I can quickly delete the destination table, etc., etc. there. Now, importantly, as I showed you, you can easily export it. And as you can see here, I'm just going to click. I'm going to open the data, and then I'll open this in Excel, and I'm going to immediately see the data. And so why am I doing this? Because I want to basically show you how easy it is to get data that is out. So as long as you don't have too many rows, you can see here I immediately pull the data into Excel. I've got this here. I roll over. I do my thing. I go to Insert. I create a little quick bar chart. Oh, just a little bit unhappy with this part here. And I've got everything I need. So Safari is null, and there's my bounce rate. So I've got my bounce rate by browser all laid out here, and it's easy to actually execute this overall piece. Now there's a ton more that I could show you. There's a whole bunch of new features that were just released in the August 25th release, but I want to basically share this with you here, and hope that if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
But it's important to note that the BigQuery engine is part of a much larger cloud architecture that many of our enterprise clients currently use. For example, in terms of this here, you will see in the new cloud architecture paradigm as of the last release, you've got the ingest, the processing, the storage, and the analysis phases. In terms of the storage phase, you'll see BigQuery being used here to store data coming from many different sources. Many of you on the call might be thinking about ingesting data from batch processes or streaming data in, and it doesn't just have to come from Google sources. It can come from many different sources. So BigQuery is perfectly aligned in concert with cloud storage to be able to make that possible. Again, the other use or the other recognition is the fact that the Google Cloud architecture is really important from an analysis perspective. So you can see here that if you know SQL, you can basically query the Google interface, and of course you can basically get your results. Now, importantly, you did see me writing SQL in the interface. For any developers and developer teams, there are a robust, a large number of APIs that currently exist, from Java to Python to pretty much any language that you could imagine your development teams using. You can use this to interact with the Google API and query the data so that you get the results that you're looking for. And then you can take those results, run your analysis, and spit those into a wide variety of enterprise systems to actually enable personalization, to generate a single view of the customer, and do a whole bunch of work. Now, this is a quick list of why our clients like BigQuery. In fact, I should say why our clients love BigQuery, because we have got a lot of our clients using BigQuery and adopting it. Now, some of these include the following. Obviously, it's fairly complementary to other tools. It is quite complementary. In fact, if you have an ecosystem, a technology infrastructure built on AWS, if you're building in another cloud environment, if you work in the .NET framework, or you work with any other database suites, BigQuery is going to be perfect for your environment. It also offers things like flexible data ingestion. Many of you on this call likely have many different data sources that you ingest. We currently have clients ingesting, in some cases, 2, 3, 20, 25 different data sources in, and using BigQuery as an engine to drive that data forward. Now, BigQuery is also extremely fast and performant, and Corey mentioned that quite clearly at the original call. It also reduces time and expense, which is obviously a huge benefit in a technology time when cost is a major concern. And it is affordable. If you are not a Google Premium subscriber, you can obviously take advantage of the services of BigQuery, and you simply pay as you go. So every time you run a query, you pay a very, very small cost, usually in the matter of cents, to actually execute that query, in some cases over many terabytes of data. Also, BigQuery allows ease of collection. It's protected and secure. It's part of a strong and growing partner ecosystem, which is important, especially if you're a business user or you're a technology user that's concerned about making an investment in a new technology project and worried that a technology item may not play nicely with the other pieces inside your system. BigQuery is the perfect tool to enable that. It's also, of course, fully managed, and there's no major infrastructure needed, which means that you don't need to hire a big team of database administrators and system administrators to superpower your BigQuery use. The other advantage of BigQuery is the fact that the third-party support continues to increase. So what this means is, like I said, if you're ingesting data from many different sources, analytics, AdWords, DoubleClick, and AdSense, or any corporate data or third-party data sets, including data warehouses, enterprise resource ERP systems, it is capable of dealing with and analyzing data from all of those various sources. At the same time, many of you on the call are likely faced with the challenge of actually reporting against that data and making that reporting available at an enterprise level. In this case, for example, you can see Tableau and ClickView, Google Spreadsheets, as well as other methods, and this is something that Google is actively continuing to invest in every day to increase the amount of external sources that it can push its data to. Now, it's important to recognize that BigQuery is part of the larger big data pipeline. Now, Corey initially focused on the fact that it's part of, the Google Cloud infrastructure, but I include this diagram here so that theoretically you can understand that if you have data stored in a CRM or a database and you can ETL that into cloud storage, for example, then BigQuery can be your environment to actually analyze and aggregate the data. Now, many of you on the call might be dealing with IT teams that have Hadoop-enabled, data lakes, or you have large-scale databasing systems, SQL Server, etc., and you've got processes going on. The great thing is this is a perfectly complementary technology, and as we have seen, in fact, is replacing some of those systems, which is very exciting. The other thing, of course, here is that it powers visualization. Now, you might be thinking to yourself right now, well, this is very difficult for me to imagine. What would it look like in practice? And what I'll put up here is just a few second look of what we do here at Cardinal Path. I get the opportunity to work with many different large enterprise clients to actually take that theory, which you previously saw, and actually build large-scale systems around that. And what you're seeing here is an example of a system that might be built out over a period of 12 months with different stages, recognizing the different builds and the different pathways and, in fact, different capabilities that would be enabled by each of the different components. So as you look at this, if you think, wow, I would love to enable more effective forecasting or price optimization, I've got challenges in budgeting, I've got forecasting issues, I need to do personalization, I don't know how to deal with things in an advertising environment or to generate a single view of the customer, these are all questions and problems that BigQuery can help you solve successfully no matter the size of your business. The important thing, again, at the end of the day here is that even though it's a technology piece, BigQuery brings together many different data sources, allows you to analyze those, and allows you to focus on making business decisions versus managing data structures. And that means you can spend more time thinking about business decisions, developing strategy, executing, and helping your businesses grow and succeed. And that, in essence, in my mind, is a perfect, is just absolutely perfect for a technology product. Now, as Corey alluded to, there are many different relevant use cases. I won't talk in detail about any of these use cases here, but obviously I note some of the use cases I've been privileged to be involved in developing over the last year. Some of these include generating a single view of the customer, trying to get a single view of an online to an offline conversion. Of course, data aggregation and storage, trying to figure out how to aggregate data from a CRM system, from Salesforce, from online, from an offline, from store data, and actually bring it together to make a decision about which customers to target. Benchmarking, forecasting, and prediction are all extremely relevant. How do you decide how effectively a segment is performing relevant to other segments? And then how do you make forecasts and predict what a segment can do? BigQuery, particularly the hit-level data that you get if you're a Google Analytics client, Google Analytics Premium client, can allow you to do this. Now, data integration, of course, is key, and we have many cases where we are brought in to support data integration between systems. Data mining and log level analysis. Many of you may have data stored in different places, and that is obviously an important use case. How do you deal with logs which are obviously difficult to access? The powerful thing is, if once those are ingested into BigQuery, all you need is an analyst or someone on your team that knows SQL, and with that you can query the data. Sales and cost forecasting and analysis are also obviously important use cases. Ad targeting, segmentation, and media mix modeling, all predictive and important business tasks that we've been involved in. Sensor level data collection. Any of you in the retail sector might be thinking, wow, I would love to be able to track the movement of users within a store environment or understand the movement of certain things using sensors. BigQuery can handle an unlimited amount of data, and it is infinitely scalable. And of course, mobile tracking and analysis is very, very important. And it is important when you're likely thinking to yourself, how do I get cross-device? How do I truly understand what user I'm looking at if the user is on their mobile device sometimes, and then they're at home in the desktop watching something another time? And finally, these are some other really relevant use cases that hopefully, as you think about, you can now start to consider BigQuery as well as the larger Google Cloud ecosystem. For example, display advertising analytics, right? Once you've got your data set together and you have a single data set, taking that data set and funneling into and helping support segmentation in a data management platform can be absolutely important. Or buying ads online and then actually using that to do effective targeting, or running an email campaign. Those are all, again, things that can spur out of that initial work. Ad network reporting is there, and to be honest with you, supply chain and operations management. This is one that I've been involved in over the last 6 months, where we have multiple clients saying, can you take a larger view of the organization? If BigQuery is so perfectly sorted from many different data sets, why not simply ingest data in our supply chain, ingest operations data, call center data, take that data and actually report against it? That is exactly what it's designed to do, and in fact, its direct connections to things like Tableau help enable that. And finally, the last two, I talked about mobile, but revenue and product mix optimization. If you're in an organization where you're trying to decide which products to feature, or how to do personalization, or how to recommend. We have a clients building recommender systems, in fact, using the data and, in fact, the capabilities of BigQuery through the API. Those are all extremely powerful use cases. All right, so I'm hoping there that that basically encapsulates it, and I'll pass this back to Corey.
Sure, thanks, Nate. So we've got, obviously a lot of info here, and not enough that we can cover in this webinar. I know that many of you are going to kind of be evaluating here. If this is something that you feel like it meets some of your use cases, you'd like to learn more, we do have a 2.5-hour boot camp that's coming up on the 26th. This is going to be our BigQuery Bootcamp. It's online, and it's ideal for folks who are just getting started. From that, we've got a 10% off discount coupon here for folks that are interested in that. And I believe we also have the results of our previous poll. Okay, so we asked the question of what were primary data sources, and so 23% of you are going to be pulling in just the Google Analytics data. So you want to get access to that raw hit-level data to be able to do your own. Maybe it's attribution, maybe it's pulling that around with your other digital marketing sources, but it's going to be very much that analytics data. Only 2% said that they were planning on not using the Google Analytics export at all. This is going to be purely something that we use similar to how you would use Amazon Cloud or some Microsoft services. You're just going to use the query function, the data store function, and be able to kind of take advantage of that horsepower without having to build your own servers and run your own data centers. 74% said you're going to do the digital and the offline combined, and yeah, that really seems to be where a lot of the power is, saying, well, I've got all my digital analytics data, I've got my Google Analytics data, but that's just a piece of the puzzle. I want to be able to upload the rest of my data. Maybe it's your CRM data. Maybe it's everything from the weather data. That's interesting to see weather patterns, especially if you're talking about offline stores, are really influenced by some of those things. Unemployment data. I've seen all kinds of use cases that are really quite interesting. But that does seem to be one of the major benefits from here, because while we can get other types of data into Google Analytics, we can add custom dimensions to add more context to our data. it's really not easy to take a massive data set and upload that into Google Analytics. And this is really the case where we would do that. To say, I have all this data there, I have my Google Analytics data, my Web Analytics data, my app data, and I want to be able to combine those two together. So not a surprising one here, and we're starting to see more of those use cases come through, and I think that's makes a lot of sense and is in line with what we're seeing there. I do want to make sure we have the opportunity here also to take over some questions that have come in. I know there's a lot of folks. Feel free to continue to submit questions or even use cases that you may have as well.
Absolutely, and we do have some questions that have come in, so I'm going to pose this first one to you, Corey. The question is historical data available?
Yes. So this is a relatively new feature, actually. Now, before, the way it worked was as soon as you turned on the integration there between Google Analytics, and I assume this is referring to historical Google Analytics data, when you turn on that integration, it started to export this every night. And so what happens is at night, when the day is done, it's going to do this export through there. You're going to get the data. It's going to come over. You're going to get every single hit that comes back. So every hit can be a page view, it can be an event, it can be an e-commerce transaction. Every bit of information that streams into Google is captured, and then what's going to be sessionized. And so you will be able to see how Google Analytics is capturing all of those different hits into the individual sessions, and then that data gets exported into BigQuery essentially once per day there. And now you have the ability to also export previous sessions and previous hits to come along with that data. So that's another big help as folks want to be able to do things like lifetime value and really be able to understand what's happening. The limitation where you had to start from today was tough, but now to be able to go back as early as November 1st, 2014 is a big win.
Okay, Corey, I'm going to direct this one to you as well. It's a good question. A few people are asking, do I need to be a GA Premium customer to use this?
Well, yes and no. The ability to export from Google Analytics is a Google Analytics Premium only feature, and so for the 70-some% who said that they want to combine that data, then yes, you would. But if you're using BigQuery for your other big data needs, then anyone can go in and sign up for an account to use it. You don't have to be a GA Premium customer to upload your own data and crunch through it that way, although I think only 2% said that was what they were interested in. So it is offered as a cloud service. The connector back to Google Analytics is just one piece of the BigQuery puzzle, but it appears to be one that many people are interested in, and that does require GA Premium.
Thanks, Corey. Nate, this one is for you. What are the alternative solutions to BigQuery?
Well, if you're talking just technically from a database perspective, there are many out there. BigQuery is just a big column store database, so you could be a SQL Server shop. You might be a shop that's using, for example, something like Amazon Redshift as a data store. You might be, like I said, using any other database solutions, MongoDB, Raven, really any database. I mean, at its root, it functions as a database, and in fact, it is one of the many solutions that we use here at Cardinal Path. So, put it in that sphere. I think that hopefully should make sense.
All right. Corey, last question for you. Can I upload data to GA by uploading through BigQuery?
So to go the other direction. So if you have information that you would want to put into Google Analytics and see it there, can we use BigQuery to upload the data and then push back through? Unfortunately, it is a one-way export. This is going to export from BigQuery from Google Analytics into BigQuery. There's no way to really go the other direction, so this isn't going to be a way to get it into Google Analytics. It's more that you can get the data out of Google Analytics and then combine it in BigQuery with whatever data you may have.
All right. Nate, I'm going to throw this one over to you. The question is, do you have recommendations or preferences for data visualization or predictive modeling?
Well, absolutely. The really cool thing, and I wish I had time to show everyone here on it, is that first off, from a visualization perspective, BigQuery plays nicely with a lot of different tools. So if, for example, you're a Tableau user, which of course is something that some of our clients use, there is a direct connection through to BigQuery. You can just point it at a table with very limited maintenance needed, and it will automatically have the data come out on the other side, and then your analyst can use it. And that could be the same if you are, for example, a ClickView user and any of the other solutions that exist. Now, that may only get you part of the way from a visualization perspective, or sorry, from a big data science perspective. BigQuery, of course, is accessible, interestingly, through things like R. So if you currently have data science teams that are currently using R to build predictive models, to do segmentation, to do classification, to do churn models, you can directly connect and authenticate through to actually do that. As well, there are other systems, you're seeing Scala and other systems being used for machine learning tools, or native Python, for example, and all the scientific libraries there. So no matter the technical level, from actually developing the things programmatically to doing it inside something like an R or Julia, to going up to the other end where it's a pre-delivered visualization system with less analysis capability, BigQuery dials in directly with pre-done connections to pretty much all of those.
Thanks, Nate. Are there any user-friendly drag-and-drop packages available for BigQuery for non-SQL coders?
So in terms of there are different systems that currently exist. I believe there are some tools that are just ETL tools that allow you to point and do a drag and drop. I believe there's some other like Analytics Canvas and some of the other basic ETL tools. The other thing is, if you are using any of the other ETL that are visual point and click, you can also use it. So I guess that would be my first answer. Yes, there are solutions. If you have specific questions on them, let me know, because it depends. The other thing that I would say is, number one, don't be afraid necessarily of the SQL pieces that are there. Now, if you are a seasoned SQL developer, you're going to look at it. In fact, sometimes seasoned SQL developers have more issues because they're coming over from a traditional paradigm. But Google has tremendous documentation, and in fact, most of the time we can take an analyst that's never actually seen SQL very much and have them live and functioning within 24, 48 hours. In fact, oftentimes in our 3-hour sessions, I just conducted one yesterday, we have developers that are never seen it executing queries in the interface within 3 hours.
Wow. All right, so the next question is, can I extend BigQuery to manufacturing done by e-commerce companies? And then he also says, analyzing their data to forecast raw material, assembly line budgeting, and supply chain costs.
So absolutely. Part of the things, part of my work and part of my background here is in optimization in terms of, linear programming optimization. The thing is, BigQuery can just hold the data. So what BigQuery will do is allow you to get the data set up from an operations. Let's say you have an enterprise resource system or a data warehouse that's holding operational data, that's holding budgeting data or cost data. You can then use that and fit it into a model to make predictions and actually to build models that optimize your plan. So if you're imagining trying to figure out the optimal way to move inventory around a factory floor, or trying to figure out the optimal way to staff based on patterns you're seeing in not just digital data, but in fact, total users moving through your store. This is exactly a use case that BigQuery can help, because it's fast. It can deal with pretty much terabytes and terabytes of data, hundreds of terabytes of data in the span of minutes, and is able to basically attach, deal with any use case, frankly.
All right, I think we're going to leave it there for questions. We do have some really good questions coming in, and if we didn't get to yours, we do promise to follow up with you directly after the webinar to give you some answers. So I'd like to thank our presenters, Nate and Corey, for all of the good information.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I hope you found the session useful. And we will send around a link to the recording by email. So as for next steps, if you would like to speak with somebody from Cardinal Path, there's the info@cardinalpath.com address there. Just a reminder, the BigQuery Bootcamp is happening on August 26th, and we will send around the promo code that we mentioned earlier in the webinar so that you can take advantage of that as well. And of course, lots of resources on cardinalpath.com that you might like to check out. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and have a great day.